conference today. And thank you very much for being there. Welcome. This will be a very constructive and interesting day. And in the first place, I have the honor to introduce you to the Vice Chancellor of London Metropolitan University, Professor Malcolm Gillis.
I'd like to welcome you to London Metropolitan University. I hope you can translate from Australian into your own home language. The London Metropolitan University has been here since 1848 in one form or another, right in the centre of London, providing a quality education to students who don't necessarily have that standard background that you might have through school or other formalised forms of learning for post-secondary study. We're very proud of that and continue with that access mission today, sometimes despite the various cutbacks of austerity or changes in government policy. So you're right in the heart here of the City of London, the square mile of London, in the news particularly in the last 5 or 6 years by being the world centre for many of those big collapses and difficulties in the banking and indeed sometimes in the legal service areas. And so I'd like to hope that you will enjoy that experience of being right here in the centre on a warm spring day, the sort that we know in Britain in April. I hope you bought your snowshoes because it is snowing now outside. I'd like to welcome you wherever you come from, but I know some of you are here as members of ULITA. I know that many of you are here as members of the consortium, specifically to do with this quality in legal translation project. And so whether you've come, like Hendrik from Belgium, or from France, or Spain, or Ireland, or Latvia, or from the University of Trieste in Italy, and I'll let you be at Trieste next week, so I hope it'll be warmer there than here. I want to say a very warm welcome to London Metropolitan University as the host of your conference. I'd also like to say to you that as a university we're very committed to the European Union. This is not just because at one stage in the last decade we had the largest number of European Union students of any British university, but because as a university over the last 40 years of British membership of the European Union, we've been committed to its ideas and its philosophies of collaboration and thereby strengthening the role of Europe, but also trying to build a different world from that recent history over the last century or two of Europe. And I have to say more personally, I have a concern as Britain talks about a referendum to exit from the European Union or various other problems of that collaboration, I have a concern that we should not slow down on that collaboration and development. Indeed, the kind of collaboration that you're talking about today in an issue which is of particular importance to us in Britain as to how you get efficient translation and interpreting services to meet various European Union obligations. Can I say, as a graduate, my first degree is in languages, alas, Latin and ancient Greek, so we don't tend to have much parallel translation these days, except in the Vatican, where they do need it just at the moment. It's very important that we do have accuracy in translation and in interpreting, but also, having yesterday been reading a number of High Court judgments, in simple transcription, to make sure that we do have accuracy in literally what was said in even the home language, let alone how that's being interpreted or translated, because that is quite a challenge, particularly for us as such a big international city here in London. As I understand of your project is looking at these issues of rights to interpretation and translation, and particularly the rights of people who have been suspected or accused of various crimes. And that's something which in a city like London is always a challenge, with the very high degree of mobility that we have into and out of the city. I also notice that that issue of the growing mobility of European Union citizens is something which is of increasing emphasis in so many aspects of the law and of the directives of the European Union. It's something we're very proud of in terms of Erasmus and other programs whereby students study across the national boundaries. But it's something where we need to do further work, and with under 1% of British university students studying abroad during their undergraduate years, but in some of your countries, 5, 10 or even 15% of students gaining that experience, it's important that we work on the two-way mobility, because in that regard we actually build the linguistic expertise and some of the skills that you will in fact be tested on today. There is a common belief in many English-speaking countries that the truth is written in the English language, and that if something hasn't been translated into English, it isn't in fact valid and certifiable. I'd just like to say to you, as someone with a languages background, I'm afraid to tell you that isn't true, and I would never like to think that that would be true or would be taken, that the English language has automatically to be the bench stone, the actual foundation stone of so many of the issues we take in good legal practice, even though English may become the lingua franca of increasingly large swathes of Europe. So I hope the work you're doing here today helps us to keep a multicultural, multilinguistic Europe alive, while also recognising that the balance between those languages, and probably the balance between the language of the people accused of these various criminal offences, will change from one generation to another, just as that mobility changes. In the conference that you have today, I noticed that you're drawing on many different people, many different resources, and I hope that you'll find that this is something which is useful for you in then pursuing the purpose that you have, which is ultimately, as I understand it, to conform with the various directives of the European Union, so that all countries within the European Union are in accordance with those directives. Just before I close, I'd like to do a small promotion to the excellent work that we're doing in translation and interpreting here at London Metropolitan University. We have a suite of translating rooms downstairs in the basement in this Moorgate building. We've been teaching translation at London Met for the last 16 years with vibrant programs both at undergraduate and at postgraduate level. We have these programs that are accredited by the Permanent International Conference of Institutions for Translations and Interpreters, QUALETRA I think it's called. We provide our translation services as part of European Masters networks and to European Union bodies. We have a very proud group of accreditations and a very nice flag of the United Nations flying up on our first floor a little further along here in recognition of United Nations recognition. We are very concerned, being in the centre of London, to make sure that our facilities and our translation work is of use to the firms and the businesses in London, as well as being relevant to the institutions and the formal bodies such as the European Union. And so here is an ideal place for some of the legal skills to be talked about, if you consider the number of legal firms within 1 kilometre of here. And we have many projects, including a number of Tempest projects that extend out into Central Asia and also into Eastern Europe. So we're trying to do our bit through the medium of language, its translation, its interpreting, to make sure that we are playing the role that an institution right in the centre of London should play. I wish you all the best for the conference. I hope that you will enjoy being in Britain, and if you have other conferences to go to, I hope you'll find that in total you have a very rewarding stay here in the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Keys. I go now over to another speaker. It's myself, Enrico Cart. As you may know already, I'm the overall coordinator of the QUALETRA project, but it's coordinating, so it's a nice team which will achieve nice teamwork. So let me start with some opening remarks and a freshening up of what QUALETRA stands for. So these are the partners. We are all member of the European Masters in Translation Network, and then you see here all the university partners and the lawyers associations and the European Commission too. So we, as Professor Gilles introduced very nicely and very correctly, we live in this kind of situation where the EU is changing, and we register important figures on criminal proceedings involving a non-national, whether EU or non-EU. Of course, that generates costs and translation, of course. So as a consequence, a logical consequence, the need for legal translation will increase significantly. I insist already now that QUALETRA, quality in legal translation, focuses on translation, not on interpreting. We had many precedent projects which focus more in interpreting. This is focusing exclusively, I would say, on legal translation. And I would even restrict that more to legal translation in criminal proceedings. And as the project will continue, we'll see that we only will focus on some special case studies. It is supposed to be a strong basis, and later on we will have spin-offs of QUALETRA. That's in fact a further avenue of possibilities later. So this is a map. I hope you know which part of the world it represents. And this map is extracted from Eurostat. So it's a very confident statistics material from the European Commission. And the green color there shows that the number of foreigners residing in the EU member states is not from within that EU member state. So this shows the needs of translation. And it's not only EU languages, it states and non-EU citizens as well. So you see there's a lot of dark green here. And that, of course, we need the translation because it's a very delicate position in which this translation will be needed. It's suspected and accused persons in criminal proceedings. And QUALETRA focuses on the rights of these persons. So that's an important image, why QUALETRA was so much needed. So that's what I said, growing mobility of EU citizens. We are a lot of EU citizens, different EU citizens in different member states. So we move more and more. And of course we need to implement directives, because directives, they will eventually become a law in the EU member states. So it's very important to anticipate the situation created by the necessary implementation of a directive. And that directive is our key document, and it's on the right to interpretation and translation in criminal proceedings. Of course, QUALETRA cuts out the translation part. That's what we are going to focus on. There are other projects which focus more on the interpretation. Anyway, consequences for EU member states, legal practitioners, they will have to deal with this new situation. They actually do already, and QUALETRA wants to assist them in dealing, in contacting, in communicating more easily, more efficiently with the legal translators. That's an important focus of QUALETRA, the communication, the merging between these two stakeholders groups, legal practitioners and legal translators. Of course, the training institutions are very much involved in this because training in Europe, in the EU, is not very much fit to this implementing the directive. So it's not legal interpreting, we are focusing on legal translation. And more particularly, we will focus on the systemic chain of quality assurance, meaning training, but also testing, assessment, evaluation, transparency, objectivity in evaluation. Assessment of the specific needs of the EU member states, of course, that's a very important starting point. We need to know what's there. We need to know what is not there. And it will lead us to customized and certified training materials, preferably through the European Certification and Qualification Association, ECQA. So this is a European association which has ready-made templates, online formats of assuring training, but also testing and accreditation. The customized is an important word there, or term. I'm a terminologist. Customized is important there, because in each EU member state the needs will be different according to what there is in place already. EU-wide accreditation, of course, that's also linked to the growing mobility of the citizens in the EU. Timeline, we started in November 2012, that was ages ago, and November 2014 is not immediately there, but I wouldn't say it's imminent, but it is coming fast. So every month I will distribute the timeline again, and the blacked out months show the achievements. We are here at a very important sort of starting point. It's a launch conference, and from here we will develop nicely and achieve our objectives. So, raising the quality of legal translation and training in criminal proceedings. So, curricula in training institutions will be involved, assessment procedures and training materials. Improve the training of legal translators and practitioners. That's important to know. It's both groups. It's not only for legal translators, it's also for the legal practitioners. So, which groups can be involved here? Is police, is prosecutors, court staff, judges, lawyers, professionals providing victim support too. Nice outcomes. Normally I start from the top to the bottom, now bottom up, sorry. Nice elements here. Translation memories will be a nice assistance in providing templates, formats, which will help translators streamline their translation. Term bases, multilingual term bases, accredited tests, that's for the training and the accreditation and the evaluation, and training programs, of course. We need to reach common minimum standards of procedural rights in criminal proceedings, protection of basic rights, that I have said that is important. That's the target, final target group, suspected and accused persons, which is necessary for all judicial decisions taken by EU member states to be recognized by other member states. It's the principle of mutual recognition which is important here. As a result, we expect transparent, cost-effective criminal proceedings in the EU courts which guarantee the rights of suspected and accused persons as is stipulated in the directive. Now, project activities. We have 5 work streams in the QUALETRA project. It's a quite important project with many partners, which is important. And I will just give the main objectives and the main deliverables here, because it's just opening. So work stream 1, essential documents. This is basically one of the most important documents we need. These essential documents have been mentioned in the directive without being too precise. So we need to analyze the essential document types which are listed in the directive so that we can build up a coherent, representative corpus of documents from which we can develop the term bases, from which we can develop the translation templates and so on. So this is very important work stream activity. So we are here at the launch conference. One of the objectives of the launch conference is to say what we have already achieved. and essential documents for, I would say, 90% have reached us, and the work stream 1, work stream 2 for the European arrest warrant document can start working from these documents. This is what the directive lists: decisions depriving a person of liberty, charges brought against a person, indictments, judgments and decisions, and other possible documents essential to the victim's exercise of their rights. So you see, it's extremely important to have these documents, because that's the basis on which we are going to work. The deliverables of Workstream 1, I just showed them. You will have the PowerPoint presentations, also this one, via the ULITA website. So we will have comparable multilingual corpora, templates, quality parameters, and so on. I won't read through them. Translation memory and publication. Okay, here I stopped a bit on the publication. It's an important keyword here, because the presentations which we see today, 6 presentations, have been selected. We have received many more, and it does not mean that the others were not good. On the contrary, they were all very good. But we choose these 6 because we have one day, and we specifically focused on the immediate relevance of the launch conference. But the others, they have not been thrown away, not at all. They will be reviewed together with today's presentations, and we initiated with Nadia already some negotiations with Jostrans to have them published. And Jostrans is an online journal, but highly ranked for international scientific publications. So that's how all the contributions will be rewarded. There will still be another call for papers, and we will communicate the details later. But what has been and what will be presented today will definitely be published, and preferably by a journal at the rank of Jostrans. Thank you for this suggestion. That does not mean that the final conference, that's next year, final conference papers will also be reviewed and published. So we will have 2 publications. It's important for dissemination of the results. Workstream 2, London Metropolitan University. That's the same as the essential documents, but London Metropolitan University, as coordinator of this workstream, will focus on the European arrest warrant. So the cooperation with European lawyers associations, with ULITA, with the other partners is the same, but they will focus on the European arrest warrants. And they will also add another focus on training in this area. So that's the same corporate building. I will not go into detail here. The deliverables are the same, but training course will be added. Okay, Workstream 3, Università degli Studi di Trieste. Objectives, there are 2-fold. Development of 1 or more curricula and training materials for LTs, and in QUALETRA jargon, it's legal translators. For legal translators. Development of 1 or more core curricula for language training of legal practitioners. So in this work stream, it will become very clear how much there will be intertwined, these 2 groups. That's important to know. Outputs, yes, legal training for translators and translation training for legal practitioners. That's an important one. Knowledge of existing training programs. And here, another key word where I will stop is that together with the coordinators, Workstream 0, and we are the Workstream 0, the coordinator. But Workstream 3 and Workstream 4, and we are also the coordinator of Workstream 4, have prepared a survey to disseminate. So it will be disseminated also via the ULITA website, but here I have an important message. These 2 surveys should be disseminated as widely as possible, because we want as many responses as possible. And of course it has also to be significant. We cannot work and judge on a survey completed by 2 people. It's not enough. So that's important, the survey. Survey, please disseminate. Yes, that's important. Okay. Then working 4, that's KU Leuven Thomas More. We used to be Lessius, but eventually we will be called KU Leuven, University of Leuven. We will be focusing on testing, evaluation and assessment procedures, together with ECQA, European Certification Qualification Association. We work with ECQA, with the EMT universities, with ULITA, with lawyers associations, to reach a joint certification framework. This is important in the light of one of the presentations we will see today. It is very important for the registers in national EU member states, the registers of accredited legal trainers and translators too, of course. So we need testing, assessment, evaluation materials, curricula, and so on. So the details, we don't have too much time now. I don't have too many important things to say. Our speakers will. Works in 5 conferences. Of course, that's the final conference and the launch conference. That's to disseminate and to have nice network events. The inside people know what that means, a network event. Very important to disseminate even more and to discuss and to finalize. So that's the launch conference here. You will have an update of what's happening in Europe. Surveys are important here. We will start distributing them. Yes, the quality, of course, is important, but the whole project is quality, not only the conferences, of course. Final conference, publication is the keyword here. And then, after the final conference, it starts, in fact. We will start developing spin-offs, and then it goes more and more in the courts, in the area of accused and suspected persons in the EU. Launch conference, final conference, with the network events. Publication, and that not only in printed format, but also electronically via ULITA website. It's such a nice website. Please consult it regularly. You can, because there is a QUALETRA subheading, and there will be documents and so on, like the presentations of today. This is for your own consultation. Thank you for your attention.
Hi everyone, welcome again to London Med, welcome to QUALETRA Launch Conference. I hope you'll enjoy it and I hope you'll find it very useful. Just some practical issues, nothing to do with the conference as such, the content. We will break up later on at 10:30, then for lunch at 12:30, and finally at 3:30 for tea. So there'll be 2 tea breaks and lunch. And there will be a networking event after the conference, after 5:30. So please stay. There'll be wine and nibbles and a nice conversation, hopefully. There will be help around. There are 3 students. Maria is at the back, the others are finishing registration, and they'll come around, and they'll be there, so you'll see them. If you need anything, please do ask. I'll be there, and other colleagues as well. Everything is signposted, but if you, for any reason, don't see where the toilets are, or where lunch is, or we'll show you, but ask, please. We are here to help. Water is at the back. Please help yourself. I know it's a bit hot, so please do. Those who left their, I think, suitcases and coats downstairs, when we have our tea break, would you please pick them up here? and put them at the back if you don't mind. Yeah? I think some people left their coats and their suitcases downstairs. The other thing that I think we need to know is that there will be certificates of attendance and receipts for you to collect. So on your way out, if you go back to the room where you registered, your certificates will be waiting for you, so pick them up on your way out. And finally, may I ask you to switch off your phones? I know that I always forget to do that, so just in case you did. So please do switch them off. And I think that's basically it. So, thanks.
Okay, so now we have the honor to have Ms. Helga Zara here, and she is the portfolio manager of DG Justice from the European Commission, and she gladly accepted to come here and to have a keynote speech. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. I would actually like to thank you for the opportunity to deliver this keynote speech for the launch of such an important project like QUALETRA. I am here representing actually Mr. Ritis Martikonis, who is the Director General for Translation at the EU Commission. You may know that the Commission is divided into various Directorates General, and which are basically departments which deal with different portfolios. I work with DG Translation, but within DG Translation I act as a liaison, as a portfolio manager with the Directorate General for Justice. And it is with them, that we implement the QUALETRA project. I was delighted at the opportunity to address this event, as QUALETRA is a project which I have been observing with interest. My background is that as a lawyer, and I also worked as a lawyer linguist in the past with the European Court of Justice. And this background actually gave me an insight in the particular difficulties relating to legal translation and the difficulties of translating the legal concepts of one legal system into the legal jargon of another. This difficulty is multiplied in cases involving criminal offences, where sometimes the offence which is subject to criminal sanctions might not exist in the law, and therefore in the legal jargon of the home state of the accused. The translator here must, to an extent, carry out a comparative law exercise. He must identify the best corresponding legal concept in the target language, and in the absence of this, make a description. So, why QUALETRA, and what is its importance to the Directorate General for Translation? Well, let me first speak about DGT, the Directorate General for Translation, its mission and its importance in the EU context, and then I will move on to QUALETRA in this regard. DGT's mission is basically to provide the European Commission with high-quality translation and other language services. Its job is to respect the European Union's multilingual character by making sure that the Commission produces clearly written documents in all the official languages and in other languages as required. DGT is therefore deeply aware of the importance of translation to the whole European project. Multilingualism is an indispensable part of the European legal order. Linguistic diversity is one of the objectives of the European Union, and it is also protected by Article 22 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU. Furthermore, every citizen has the right to participate in the democratic life of the Union, and that right can only be guaranteed by access to its documents and proceedings in a language which he or she understands. The importance of languages to the European project is underlined by the fact that the very first law adopted by the then European Economic Community, the EEC, a regulation which was adopted in 1958, required that all regulations and other documents of general applications be drafted and published in all the official languages. With every enlargement of the EU, this regulation was amended to include the new languages. And this is the regulation which ensures language parity. It means that all linguistic versions of legal acts are equally valid and binding, and also means that the translation of a legal act are as binding as the original language version, and ensures the respect of the right of citizens to access a legal act in their own languages. Going back to the first speech, where it was mentioned that the English do not sort of consider that if an act was not translated in English, it is not sort of valid. Basically, at the moment, around 95% of laws are drafted in English within the EU. And they are all translated into the various languages. The rest are translated basically from French and from German. But those translations are as valid as the English original. This principle of legal parity does give right and of having all languages translated, all laws translated into all the EU official languages, does give rise to some controversy. Also because of the cost associated with translation, although this cost of translation and interpretation is less than 1% of the budget. There is a similar concern which has been expressed with regards to the cost of member states of implementing Directive 2010/64. However, this linguistic diversity is one of the strengths of the EU. At the moment, we have 23 official languages, soon to be 24 with the exception of Croatia, over 60 regional and minority languages, plus a number of languages belonging to immigrants from third countries and a number of dialects. Linguistic diversity has been a reality for Europe for centuries. It is, as was once stated by Commissioner Vassiliou, who is responsible for education, culture, multilingualism and youth, part of our DNA. The choice of the European Union to operate in all the 23 official languages is a recognition of the diversity on which it was founded. And the principle of multilingualism is essential to democracy and to the legitimacy of the European project. The institution of the European Union passes laws which are directly applicable and which directly affect all its citizens and companies. As a matter of simple justice, citizens must be able to understand these laws and receive information on their rights and obligations in their own national language. EU citizens also have a right to communicate with the EU institutions and in accordance with our